Cream of mushroom soup, naturally gluten-free. Cream of mushroom soup has to be one of the ultimate pureed soups. This is the template I've used since like 2015 at the first restaurant where I was chef. And I'm going to show you two different ways to make it: fresh mushrooms and dried mushrooms. First, we'll use dried mushrooms. A few important things to take into consideration here. First, don't go crazy. If you're a mushroom hunter and you have tons of dried wild mushrooms, stick to the recipe. If you had too many, it can get a little bit strong, especially if you're using boletes. And don't make it with Swillis. Don't do that to yourself. I mean, a few maybe would be fine, but like, why are you going to put those in there? Soak your mushrooms in chicken stock. Chicken stock is my favorite vegetable stock, and mushroom stock can work, but I love the body that you get from chicken stock, especially if it's homemade. You know, homemade stock makes a huge difference. Then we're going to mince the mushrooms. You don't necessarily have to mince them all because it's going to be pureed, but I like to mince them, and it makes them, ensures that they cook nice and even when we are baking them, because baking them is kind of the secret here. Dried mushrooms don't taste like a lot after they're rehydrated. So just like my caramelized porcini ravioli recipe from a few weeks ago, put a little oil on them and a little pinch of salt. Then take that pan and we're going to put those in the oven. And you're going to cook them until they are nice and caramelized. They're going to lose a little bit of volume. And this is important. You're going to get a much better result, a much richer flavor from your dried mushrooms doing them like that. If you want the Campbell's mushroom soup vibe, where you get little pieces after their soup is pureed, you can separate like 2 tablespoons out like I did there. That's totally optional. A lot of times I just like it really nice and velvety smooth, and then I'll put garnishes on afterward, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, a lot of mushroom soups are just like stock or maybe just water and like cornstarch and mushrooms. Build a good base of flavor. The white mirepoix that we're using here, that's not carrot, that's not white, celery, onion, and leek, is great. And you do not have to do an herb bouquet. I was just doing it for posterity here because I like to make them. You do not have to do that at all. You'll get plenty of good flavor, but make sure to use stock, don't use water. Then we're going to take the white mirepoix there, and we're going to cook that in some butter. You can totally use oil. You can also make this dairy-free by substituting half a cup of light oil, like light olive oil, for the cream at the end. Cook these until they're nice and soft, about 5-6 minutes. And then we're going to add some rice. Actually, it's in there. It's just kind of hard to see. And I added dry white wine there, but I remembered, I looked at my old restaurant recipe, Marsala, Sherry, or Madeira are going to be way better. If you have dry white wine, it's okay, but these really make it. There, yeah, you can see the rice in there. Okay, so we're going to strain the liquid. If I'm not going to use cheesecloth, my little trick here is just let it settle and then just toss the rest of that liquid. You have plenty of flavor in there. Or put it through cheesecloth. Then we're going to add our cooked mushrooms. Then we will add the little herb bouquet. And that was fast. Once the rice is completely cooked, add some cream. And then we just puree. Now, you want to puree this for a while, 1 to 2 minutes in the Vitamix here. And if you want it velvety smooth, you can drizzle in some olive oil or, light cooking oil while it cooks. It lowers the frictions of the blade, and it's kind of like making mayonnaise, a couple tablespoons, but you will notice a difference. It'll be super fluffy and velvety. Now, if your chicken stock is salted or if it's from a store, you may not need much salt at all. My stock was homemade, so I make sure to, season it aggressively. But be careful if your stock is store-bought, because it's usually pretty salty. Put that into a container. You can freeze it, thaw it, just make sure to puree it beforehand. You can do all kinds of different things with this. This is one I made with Luxinums. Look at how dark it is. It's like almost black. And that's a little bit of truffle creme fraiche on that. I might serve this really loose and put it in a mug, but a couple truffles on that one. You could use a little bit of creme fraiche that's thinned or sour cream that's thinned. Put a couple croutons on top, a couple chives. Lots of ways to garnish this. I think one of my favorites, though, is just like simple sauteed mushrooms and some chives and olive oil. There's some chicken in the woods. Roasted fresh mushroom soup. This version is so good. If you don't have dried mushrooms, definitely try this one. Try them both. I almost like the shiitake better than the morel and wine cap. It's something about the fresh mushrooms, and shiitakes are so dependable. So take your mushrooms, fresh mushrooms. The difference here is that, we're going to roast these mushrooms again too, because you get a better flavor. Once they're roasted, I know that was really fast. Take the mushrooms out and then we just follow the same recipe, but we're going to put the mushrooms in with the vegetables. Then we'll add some chicken stock. And then when that's all cooked, we'll add a little bit of cream. And it's just basically the same thing here, except we roast the fresh mushrooms to really concentrate their flavor instead of using dried mushrooms. And with this soup, I use like 1 tablespoon of rice. I still like a little starch in it because it helps it not separate where you get layers when it's refrigerated. But I do like 1 tablespoon, but it's not like 4 or 1/3 of a cup as I will do with the dried mushrooms. Now you can see, keep on pureeing that until it's really nice and smooth. I think my favorite garnish is just a little salad of like really quickly cooked mushrooms. There's some of the shiitakes, hon shimejis, and king oysters that I cut into tiny dice, and just olive oil and a little bit of pepper and some fresh thyme leaves. That is probably my favorite garnish, but there's so many different ways that you can make this. Just a basic cream of mushroom soup that's gluten-free because it's thickened with rice instead of flour. The full recipe is on my website, and there's a link at the top of the video description for that. Thanks for watching.